I'm Lars Helgeson, the founder and CEO of GreenRope and the author of CRM for Dummies. And this fireside chat is going to talk to you about email, how to use it effectively, really for marketing and for sales. And so the first thing that we always do whenever we talk to our customers is tell them about ways that they can maximize delivery or deliverability for their messages to make sure they get into the inbox. And the two most important things that you have to set up to do this are DKIM domain keys or Sender Policy Framework, SPF. Now our team can help you do this, but to make these technical terms simple, the idea is that when you send messages out of our servers, so in other words, when you send a message for, say, a newsletter, you're not sending that from your system, you're sending it through our system. These technologies allow other recipient mail servers, so Gmail, Hotmail, MSN, whatever, so and all the corporate inboxes, for them to look and say, is this person really sending this on behalf of the actual company, you, the customer? So we set these up to make sure that when we send our emails out, they land in the inbox, they don't go to the junk folder. Now, I would like to say that that means that once you set these up, you're guaranteed to go in the inbox. And we have whitelisting arrangements with all the major ISPs. The problem is that if you send junk out, so in other words, if you buy a list or you send emails to people who didn't ask you for permission or who didn't give you permission, then you're going to get complaints. And we can only go so far. If you have a very high complaint rate, then there's a good chance that people are, the messages that are being sent to people are going to go into the spam folder and not actually land in the inbox. So what we want to do is work with you to make sure that you've got a really good up-to-date list, to make sure that you're keeping in good touch with your contacts and your leads, and make sure you don't buy or rent lists and don't receive gifts as email lists from friends, because that's going to create a large complaint rate and that's going to cause you problems. So once we have that down, we want to look at some of the basic fundamentals that we're going to need to understand when we do our emailing. So as we know, email is an important part of business especially, but it still is also a very important part of communication for consumers as well. So one is having a good looking template. So when you send an email out, to make sure that that message looks professional. Now, if you're doing a newsletter, it's probably going to look a bit more graphical. You're going to want it to look simple. You want to have educational content in there, and you want to make sure it looks nice. But that's going to look a little bit differently than, say, a quick sales email that will want to look like it was typed manually by a salesperson going right to an individual. So keep in mind that your templates are all not necessarily going to look the same. You may want to have a little letterhead or a footer if you are doing that sales related email, and then allow the content to go in the middle. But in all cases, think about the purpose of the message and try to anticipate what the recipient of that message is going to want to see. What are they going to expect? What are they going to react to? So, and of course, over time, you're going to be iterating this because we've got some detailed stats that you can look at. You can measure what sort of campaigns are working, why are they engaging more or less with a particular kind of message. So newsletters were pretty common. They're very common nowadays. Most companies use them, and I would suggest that it's still a good idea to communicate, but just understand that a lot of companies do send messages out. So when you send a newsletter, don't just send it for the sake of saying, hey, remember us, or buy this thing. Put some educational content in there. Put something in there that people are actually going to want to stop and read. Now, remember, with all emails, what we're tracking here, we're tracking reads or opens. So this is when someone loads the images on an email that they've received, then that sends a signal back to us to let us know that those newsletters have been read. And we're also tracking clicks. So clicks are obviously links in the content of the message that you're sending. We're also tracking bounces. So a bounce is when we try to send an email to someone and it doesn't get delivered. We categorize those as soft bounces, meaning that it's a temporary failure. So their mailbox may be full, maybe for some reason you had a bad link that got it flagged as spam. So that would be a soft bounce, and then we also have hard bounces. So a hard bounce would be something that says this person no longer exists. So that's how we categorize those. And then we also automatically, for you, we manage unsubscribes. So an unsubscribe is simply someone saying, I no longer want to receive messages from you. And so we have a link on the commercial emails that allow people to click and unsubscribe. We have to do that by law. There are certain other laws that apply here. The CAN spam law, the Canadian anti-spam law. So there are certain things, certain rights that recipients of emails have that you want to make sure that you honor. One is that if they unsubscribe, you never send messages to them again. Also making sure that when you send a message that the subject line is descriptive of the content of the email. So these are all things that you need to do and to think about when you're building your newsletters and sending out messages to people. Now these last two categories here, drip campaigns and journeys, really focus more on automation. So a drip campaign would be, in our system, they're attached to groups. So if you remember when you're working within our system, here's our navigation here, and you'll see there's a little drop down here for groups. You can use groups as a way to trigger automation. So in this case, maybe you're at a trade show and someone comes up to your booth. So there's your booth, and someone comes up to your table and they say, I'm really interested in your product. And you as your salesperson may not want to have to send a message every day for the next 3 days or a message every other day. What you might want to do is put them into a group here, and inside your GreenRope account you'll have a group, and you can have a drip campaign associated with that group. So that can be a series of emails that get sent no matter what happens every day or every other day or whatever you want the sequence to be. A drip campaign really is it's like a train. It's gonna do this pretty much no matter what. And so it's a very simple way to, say, send educational content. There's not a logic. You can build some logic into it. You can do the personalization, but it's not quite as granular as what you can do with journeys. So journeys work a little bit differently in the sense that in our platform, it's a big, here you'll have a canvas here and you've got different options of what you can do, but you're building a sequence of things that can happen. So maybe someone receives an email, and then you can have a branch depending on whether or not that person opened or clicked on that email. And you can really personalize the experience. So what we want to do is use these where appropriate. What I like to say is, don't abandon your newsletter. Make sure you have a decent newsletter that you send out that looks nice, and fill it with educational content that makes people appreciate the message you're sending them. Use your drip campaigns when you want to do education, or you know that there's really not a lot of logic into the series of emails that you want to send. Use your journeys when you really want to sell something, when you want to make sure that you get as many people through your funnel as possible, and you're going to look to see, are they doing certain things that you're watching for? Do you really want them to watch a video? Do you want them to have a phone call with someone on your team? And build logic here to make sure that you're driving people to make that call to action, to actually do what you want them to do. So this has been a quick primer on email and how we use it in the context of GreenRope. Next, we're going to talk about websites and landing pages and show you how to use those effectively.